The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavior loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. If you care about the nature of reality and truth, you sooner or later realize that reality is basically infinite perception. This means that you look at the world and look at yourself and you think, okay, so what is real? What actually is true? And then you sooner or later come to the fact that, yeah, other people's experiences are true. So my own life has like its own, internal experience. This means that other people have this as well. And this means that they are as real as I am. So both of them are true. This also means that a cat living their own life has their own cat inner experience that is true. And this is true for, fish and insects and maybe plants and maybe other entities that we cannot fathom in our normal human world. And then, reality is some sort of infinite sort of perception that sees things from endless vantage points. And this makes a ton of sense if you experience your own perception as important. If you want to dismiss perception and say that nothing really matters and perception is just this weird fluke of consciousness, but beyond that nothing exists and stuff, then you're kind of in denial of life. Because what we call reality is always based on perception. There's really nothing outside of perception that any being has ever seen that it could call reality. This entire idea that there's some objective reality out there does make sense as we do perceive the same objects in existence and we can cohere around words. So it's not just all subjective experience. Like there seems to be some commonality between it all, like the fact that suffering is something that nobody wants to perceive. And within that, you can ask yourself, okay, so if there are all these different perceptions and I'm one of them and there are infinite of them, then it's sort of Godhood would basically have to perceive everything at once at the same time. And how would that possibly work? And does this mean that there's some sort of ultimate perception that supersedes everything else, that makes it so that one perception is like the ultimate one to rule them all, and this is the truth that they need to find out? So here it makes sense to ask about orders of truth. Like, what is truth really? And I find that the best way to think about truth is really in layers, because you have the most foundational layer of truth, and this is your own sense of perception, which is your own sense of self. So whenever you see something, this means that the seeing is actually happening. Like this is just true, and it is validated by your own immediate perception. And this is always the first layer. And if you don't accept that this is the first layer, then you're stuck in your own intellect and your ego is refusing to see the most obvious truth of it all. You're just ignoring that what you call reality and what you call logic and what you call existence and all of the stuff happens within consciousness. Consciousness is the ground layer of reality as like an objective way to observe what is going on. The only way this is not true is if you are denying that there is some sort of perception in the first place, which is pretty ludicrous. So then on like another layer, you can then ask, okay, so what about material objective reality, right? So there must be some truth here. And the typical example that I always go with is the earth flat or is the earth a sphere? And if you believe that the earth is flat, then you're wrong. You are perceiving the material domain incorrectly. The same way that if you don't believe that evolution or like human biological evolution isn't real, then you are wrong. You're not perceiving the material layer of reality, how it is like, and you're being fueled by your own perception. But now you might ask, but how? First of all, how do you know this? And second of all, how can you distinguish? If you say that consciousness is like the ultimate perception, then how can I not just say I perceive the earth as flat and therefore it is flat, right? It's just all a matter of perception, isn't it? Now, this requires for reality to be truly only a sort of fantasy in your own head. But it isn't. You know that your perception exists within a system that is also your external reality. If you're able to recognize that there are other beings that have their own internal self-modeling, then you can also recognize that there's something like light that hits your eye from sort of external energy source, and then it hits your eye and your eyes process them in a way. And we can even zoom into light and say how light functions and go very, very deep into detail about its velocity and all of the stuff. And then, we have symbols like math and words to determine that this is true, and we put a label on it. So if you say that the earth is flat, then you are using your fundamental awareness, like your conscious perception, to be in denial about another layer of truth. And now I don't want to say that the materialistic layer is higher order or lower order than your conscious perception. You can say it's a different layer, right? And you can say it's above it, it's on top of it. When I say that consciousness is the foundation, it means that it all leads back to it. It doesn't mean that material reality is like above consciousness or underneath consciousness, or like it's much more reasonable to think about it as an interconnective system. Without one layer, you don't have the other layer. If you don't have the light outside hitting your eye, you wouldn't perceive the way you're perceiving right now. So they are codependent on each other. There's not really one layer that is necessarily truer than another. There's just layers interacting with each other. And if you do not look honestly at physical reality, you will start to get delusions because you prefer your own perception instead of what external reality is actually telling you is the case. The ego is the sense of self that wants to cling to its own modes of perception instead of what reality is actually like, because it finds comfort in its own personal constructed layer instead of the reality that is outside of itself. And this is why when another being, like another conscious entity, sees you and tells you what you're doing or calls you out on your bullshit, that you then get defensive, because you do not want that there's an external reality that actually can be observed without filters. You want that your own filters determine reality, and therefore you can act defensively. You can ignore what other people say. You do not want to perceive what is out there really, and then you just keep in your own little bubble and you keep in your own little conscious field, which is so easy to do because it's the foundation of what you call reality in the first place. But to be in alignment with truth is to be able to look at what is outside of yourself, look at how biological, physical, scientific reality works, and then to incorporate this into your entire reality view. Now, this doesn't mean that you cannot have some sort of very deep, profound, existential insight and be a complete nutcase in terms of your relationship to reality. They often kind of come hand in hand, because the more your consciousness expands, the more relativistic oftentimes you see material frames of reference, which there's some reason to that, but it's not the most holistic you could possibly be. Like, ideally, people who are very spiritually in alignment, they are also very much grounded in scientific understanding. They are very much grounded in psychological understanding without getting too bogged down on it, right? Like, while maintaining openness. So we have these two layers and they constantly interact with each other. And what's so interesting is that what you actually are is not one layer or the other. You are the network communicating within both layers. You are the light hitting your eye. You are the perception of the earth. You are the entire cosmos as a whole interacting with itself. You are all the atoms in the universe colliding into your own mode of perception. And this is true for all other modes of perception as well. So there's almost like a sort of dualistic non-dual layer where everybody has their own mode of perception that is completely independent of other modes of perception, because they are fully like their own. Like, you see what you see and not what other people see. And at the same time, everything that has been seen by another is influencing how you see something right now. So there's this universal sense that if perception is the ground of reality, then you are basically all of perception. And you are embodied as all perceptions within your own. You are at the same time all of the universe and just one singular perception. And this is the magic, right? Because you're fully committed to be your own perspective, while also leaving to be open enough to be all other perspectives as well. Because if you want to have some sort of awakening or enlightenment or true nature of understanding about reality, then it cannot only be about your own mode of perception. This would require that your own mode of perception is the entirety of reality. And this is actually what the ego wants you to believe. It wants you to believe that after your own death, nothing else could possibly happen. So basically, you can do whatever you want in this life, and then once you die, basically, who cares, right? But if you are interconnected with all other modes of perception, then death isn't that clear of a thing either. And your own actions have consequences, maybe for some sort of afterlife. And maybe your own views of reality that you think are so important aren't actually that important. And a huge pivot point for a lot of people is when they see that this chasing of awakening or enlightenment or truth as the ultimate perspective can never be something permanent. Because even if you were to gain the perfect understanding of reality, look at how it's like to be a cat. Do you think that whatever realization you might have would change the perspective of what a cat sees, or what a cat is like, or what fishes are like? You cannot change reality. As much as you see the true nature of it all, you will see how much it already is the truth. All modes of perception are already expressed as what is true. So you wanting to find the truth and own it as some ultimate mode of perception, where you see the ultimate nature of reality, it can only work if you don't limit your own framework within your own mind. And if you include all other perceptions of reality within your own reality model. This moves you closer and closer to enlightenment, because you are now seeing reality for its totality. You see its potential. You see its different modes of being. You see your own limitation. You see your own possibility for expansion. And you see that every perspective is as valid as your own, at least in terms of being part of reality. Not that what the content of the perspective is saying, the person who believes in the flat earth truly lives their life as if the earth is flat, but this doesn't mean that on this second layer, the earth is actually flat. So you can take other perceptions seriously, like a dog seeing black and white, and then still accept that, the world is not just black and white. In the same way that my own human eyes are just, seeing a very limited frequency of how light is actually like. But how light is actually like is true even beyond my own mode of perception. And this can be seen by studying how light functions, going into detail about how it all works, gaining a new perspective by going more into detail and changing just, this is light, I know what it is, and actually analyzing light waves and analyzing how it interacts with different beings. So you can see that life in a way is a sort of infinite recursive loop where all sorts of potentials are being explored by these modes of being. And what force it is that wants to create this multiplicity in the first place, the magic that is kind of underlying it all, is the true joy of the journey. And it is the marvel that we can feel when we are very young and notice that there's something pretty incredible going on with all of it.